It is a truth universally known among readers that many of their friends only exist in books. I am no exception to this, and today I want to share with you a little about one of my very old friends, Gandalf from The Lord of the Rings. Many would recognize Gandalf as a tall, bearded wizard who went about in his signature gray cloak and hat. A little grumpy, a little fond of his pipe, but a kind and wise friend of hobbits who sometimes leads them into perilous and noble quests. But what many don't know is where he came from, or that his humble appearance was meant to shroud a great power, a power that would overwhelm those who saw it fully. Before Middle-earth was sung into existence, Gandalf was Olorin, a Maiar who served Iluvatar as a servant of the secret fire. This fire was the spirit of Iluvatar, giving life to his creation. Gandalf could uniquely wield that power on behalf of Iluvatar, which was a gift that Melkor greatly desired, but never obtained. Instead, Melkor could only wield the fire that consumed and devoured. Prior to his arrival in Middle-earth, Olorin learned pity and patience, virtues which enabled him to comfort the people of Middle-earth. And when the shadow of Sauron began to grow across Middle-earth, Olorin was chosen to become one of 5 Istari, or wizards, who would be tasked with rekindling the hearts of Middle-earth to love and defend beauty and goodness. He was given the name Gandalf, or Mithrandir, the Grey Pilgrim. In several places in the books, Gandalf finds himself face to face with the raw evil of Sauron, and knowing the backstory of his life as Olorin makes these confrontations boom with the cosmic weight of the forces at play. This is why I love Gandalf as much as I do. He's a humble, unassuming character who was tasked with preparing the way for other heroes, though he was undoubtedly the most powerful in any given group. It defies expectation when we see this character, older than the warp and woof of Middle-earth itself, making fireworks just to amuse the simplest and youngest of hobbits. It fills your heart with dread when realizing that the fiery Balrog of Khazad-dûm is strong enough to bring this powerful Maiar to the brink of ruin. It sends waves of reassurance through your heart to hear Gandalf's famous lines, knowing that the one speaking these words was there at the beginning of time. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. Why is Gandalf one of my dearest friends? Because he has seen both the depth of blackest darkness and the epitome of pure light. And yet he's not too big a person to share his wisdom with small, unimpressive people like hobbits, or me. So it is perhaps no secret to you by now that Tolkien is one of my favorite authors of all time. And I'm absolutely obsessed with anything to do with Middle-earth, Lord of the Rings. And I thought I would take a moment to share with you some of my favorite books from Tolkien's world. This is not necessarily everyone's cup of tea, I know, but I think a lot of us probably enjoy looking at books, and these are some pretty beautiful ones that I have to share with you today. So even if you're not into fantasy or the Lord of the Rings, I think you still might enjoy a look at these books. Where to start? I think I'll start off by showing you a set that I got from the UK. These are cloth-bound editions of the books. This one is Return of the King. I have the set of 3. Here, correction, I have 4. The complete set of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. As you can see, the trilogy of The Lord of the Rings, when the books are together on the shelf, they form the Tree of Gondor. So these are really fun. They're hard to find. For a while there, I think they were out of print, but they might be back in circulation now. I'm sure you could probably find them used too. But these are by HarperCollins if you're trying to find them. But I love these editions. They aren't anything particularly unique on the inside. They do have maps, but ooh, this one's a pretty cool one at the end there. But yeah, the maps are really helpful in keeping straight what's going on in the story, but I love these editions of the book. My very first set of the Lord of the Rings books was this set right here. All three of the books look like this. They just have different illustrations on the cover. I believe these were done by Alan Lee. Yes, he did the front cover. But he is an amazing watercolor artist, and these particular books actually have a fold-out map in the back that I'll show you, but they're beautiful. I love this copy of The Hobbit because this is my very first Tolkien book that I ever owned. This one right here. I got it at Barnes & Noble. I still remember the day I got it. It was a really fun outing, and I was so excited to read this for the first time. It's got maps in it as well, in both the front and back covers. Yeah, it's just a beautiful edition of The Hobbit. It's the 75th anniversary edition. So the Silmarillion is the next book that I want to show you because this is a very important work when it comes to understanding the larger mythology and just the rich history that is embedded into the Lord of the Rings. It's hinted at throughout that trilogy, but what a lot of people don't realize is that it's all fleshed out right here in this book. The Silmarillion is a little bit intimidating to some people because it's very dense and very information heavy, and a lot of the stories are weighty and hard to get through, but it's well worth it if you do. If you get through the whole thing, it's gonna blow your mind once you get to the very end of the book and you get to the story of the War of the Ring that we have in the trilogy. If nothing else, start by reading the creation myth at the very beginning. It is so beautiful, so rich. So much meaning is embedded into these books. But yeah, so along with the Silmarillion, I need to talk about this little book here. I actually have two that, both of these go together. They look identical. This one's just part 2. Part 1 is in my room. But these books, The History of Middle-earth, is essentially this. This is a 12-volume set, and this was the condensed version. Christopher Tolkien took a lot of the work that was in manuscripts and notes that Tolkien had left behind after his death and put together into the Silmarillion in a format that audiences could easily handle. But if you want to go deeper into it and want to see the various versions that Tolkien wrote and hear notes from Christopher as to how he put together the manuscripts and decided on which ones should be the final versions of the stories, you'll want to get into these. There's so much in here, but this is like an exceptionally nerdy deep dive. So if you're new to Tolkien, definitely don't start with these. This is for people who are super dedicated nerds. Before I even read the Silmarillion, I got a book called The Unfinished Tales. What I love about this is that if you've read the trilogy, you'll probably have questions about how certain stories came to be, or would love to know certain side plots or just side stories about certain characters. That's what the Unfinished Tales, that's how I would best describe it. There are stories in here that either don't appear someplace else or perhaps just, more information that was still in development before Tolkien passed, and this, never got published in a final novel. My favorite chapter in here is the one on the wizards and where they came from. You get a lot of Gandalf's backstory. Love that. Gandalf is obviously my favorite character, as you can probably tell. And yeah, there's some great stuff in here. One of the first things I read out of here was hilarious. So if you've read The Hobbit and you know the story of the dwarves and how Bilbo came to be part of their party, there's a little bit of confusion as to, Bilbo's skills. They're just, convinced that he's a burglar, and how that mistake came to be is told in this book. It's a pretty funny little excerpt. It's conversations between Gandalf and the dwarves before they ever meet Bilbo. So hearing how Gandalf sells Bilbo, it's pretty funny. If you like Old English literature and epic poetry, then you might be interested in this book right here. Everyone probably knows Beowulf, having been exposed to it in high school most likely, but Tolkien, he was a lover of languages. That was what he studied as a scholar primarily, and he did a lot of translation work. He even, in one of the books here, he actually wrote his own stories in Old English. I just love that so much. But he took Beowulf and translated it himself. And this is my favorite translation of Beowulf because it doesn't read like a poem, it reads like a story. So it's easier to read. There's notes in here throughout, and it is just so beautifully written. I absolutely love it. So if you have read Beowulf and were just kind of lost in it and did not enjoy it very much, but liked the idea of a story with monsters and dragons, then give this one a try. This one, I don't think you can get this anymore. This is a moleskin book that came out when the Hobbit movies were being released. I can't even remember what the script says on the front. I need to look that up, but it's Elvish script on the front. I don't know if you can see it. Hopefully it will focus. And there's some dragons illustrations by Tolkien. But it's a beautiful book because at the beginning it's got little pictures and quotes from the story, and I actually took a class on the Lord of the Rings as an undergraduate student, and so of course I used this notebook to take my notes. I never want to lose this because there's some, really cool notes in there. And then the last one appeals to me as an artist. This is the art of Tolkien, particularly in The Hobbit. So obviously this cover was designed by him. There's illustrations in the back, but this is more of like a sketchbook per se. You flip through it, some pages unfold. It's so beautiful, but you get to see like the different versions of his illustrations and the sketches, things he wrote out, and it's just incredible to see someone with so much talent who can not only write such an amazing fantasy story, but can also illustrate it and create his own script. I can only aspire to be a fraction as creative as Tolkien was. Well, thank you for allowing me that moment of joy in looking at all of my Tolkien books. I love books anyway, and so I tend to, when I have a favorite book, I tend to collect several versions of that, especially unique versions of it. But hopefully this has inspired you to get into the Lord of the Rings yourself if you've never read them. Thank you so much for joining me as I made that candle and shared with you some of my favorite books. I hope that it was enjoyable to you to watch, and maybe it inspired you to take some time today to read a favorite book of your own. I hope you have a lovely day or night wherever you are, and it's finally sunny out today, and so I think I'm going to go ahead and take Bear on a much deserved walk. So I will see you all next time. Bye.